Hi Pisces, welcome to your February 2020 Astro Update and Tarot Reading. My name is Raina. I'm combining these two types of readings, which I have been doing separately. This is how I used to do it when I first started on YouTube, but sometimes I just like to see, how it goes and see how it feels. I probably won't do this all the time, because I like the flow of just doing the cards. But I think it's fun because then you can see, very easily if the cards, correspond with the transits. So Pisces, for you, there's a lot of emphasis on two houses. Well, I don't know if I should say a lot of emphasis. There's the Sun starting off the month for the first almost 3 weeks in your 12th house. That's the house that you rule. So you're comfortable with that house. In Aquarius, then the Sun, your solar return, happens on the 18th of the month. But, it's worth noting that your actual official solar return is going to be on your birthday. By the way, if you hear any howling winds, it's because we're going to have quite a temperature drop tonight. So there's a lot of change in the atmosphere, I guess. So I'm just going to lay out the cards and just talk about what it means to have the Sun in your 12th house. It may mean that you are kind of incubating in a certain way, and you are perhaps waiting to be born again when your birthday comes around, when the Sun comes around. And I mean, this happens every year. It's nothing particularly unusual about it, but there are other things going on that are not necessarily always there. So that's why I wanted to talk about it. So Mercury goes into your sign on the 3rd. This will be your first house. This will, having Mercury in your own sign means that you are staying on message. This is good for anything where you have to promote yourself or meeting somebody. Like a love relationship, and somebody says, well, how do you describe yourself? And you're able to really, because when you have Mercury in the sign before you, it's in the 12th house, and it's like, well, I'm part of this cosmic whole and all this stuff. No, you can say who you are as an individual. And also for promoting yourself with any kind of like work. If you're looking for a job, for instance, you're able to kind of really explain things about yourself more easily when Mercury is in your first house. So the thing about this is that Mercury is going to go retrograde this month. And so because it's starting in your first house, and it's going to be at 12 degrees of Pisces that it goes retrograde. This is on the 16th. It's going to dip back into a late degree of Aquarius at some point. And I think actually in early March it will do that. And the point being that you're reviewing certain things about yourself, how you carry yourself, how you present yourself, because there's something that you are trying to maybe change, and the presentation is important to you. And the fact that Mercury is going back into the 12th house is interesting as well, because it can, touch upon past life influences. Pisces is an old soul. And so I could totally see you as the kind of person who perhaps has a tendency maybe to be a little bit influenced more than others in some cases by other lifetimes. In some cases you may really feel a strong connection, like you know that you've lived before, and that's how, especially if somebody's an old soul, they've had many experiences. So this is kind of touching upon that. How have I allowed myself to present myself in a certain way? Maybe it's a self-defeating pattern, because that's what the 12th house represents as well, as things that we need to let go of, whether it's addiction or whether it is some sort of self-defeating behavior that doesn't get us where we want to be. So let me just start with this, and I'll go back to the reading. I don't want to just do that too long. The heart of the matter is the Page of Swords. There's something that you're trying to find out. And that can be because your suspicions are heightened about something. And, I'm looking at your Venus here. Your Venus goes into Aries on the 7th of the month. That's the second house. That could benefit you financially. Venus rules that house. But when Venus is in the first house for the first week in your sign, that means it's been there several weeks. By the way, Mercury retrograde can also bring people from your past back. So pages can be messages. You may hear from somebody and you may be kind of like, I'm not sure to believe them. If it's somebody that you broke up with and you thought it was just completely over and now they've resurfaced, you might be a little bit skeptical, and you probably should be. Because some people do that. They go and then they come back, especially if they ghost you and they never give you any kind of explanation. That can be very, definitely a red flag that this person doesn't have good communication skills, that they maybe are trying to elicit some kind of negative response from you and control you that way by abandoning you. So I think you're going to be on high alert, but you're also trying to gain information about this, because they may be saying certain things about the situation to try to present themselves in a good light. This could be an employer too. And if it is, maybe they want you back, or if it was some kind of a job that you applied to and you didn't hear back. Now you're like, okay, well, what happened? How come they said the deadline was back in December or November? Like you're trying to see if their story matches up. There might be something a little bit fishy with what they're saying. And, there's nothing wrong in really finding out things that don't make sense to you. As a matter of fact, it's your duty, because a lot of times Pisces will take things at face value and find out later that they were deceived. So the Page of Swords could be starting a new relationship with an air sign. Gemini is the one that comes to mind, both mutable signs, but Libra and Aquarius are the other ones. And we have in the past position the Seven of Pentacles. So it may either be that you're coming from an earth sign relationship, and perhaps due to your own unique astrological makeup, you may have found that relationship to be limiting and kind of boring in some way. And this one is more lively, more intellectually stimulating. But this could also simply be that you've been kind of waiting to see if something was going to actually have some value in the long run. So maybe something that you had put into motion, waiting for the results. But with the Page of Swords, I can't help but feeling that you are doubting something, questioning something, or documenting something. The higher message is the Ten of Wands. This reminds us that sometimes we have to look at what we get involved in. You see the person hunched over. look at what you get involved in, and are you taking on something that doesn't belong to you? So, in other words, you begin dating somebody, and maybe you've been into it for a month or so, but you notice that you're the only one, you're usually the one that calls that person. You're usually the one that makes plans. That other person is saying yes or no, I'll do this or that. And maybe at first you didn't even pay attention to it, but it kind of, you start to get to sense this pattern of doing all of the heavy lifting in the relationship. And even if it's an early relationship, because I get this feeling of you're kind of just scoping it out and seeing if it's going to bear fruit. The Seven of Pentacles is the farmer's card. So bearing some kind of harvest, or being something where I invest my energy into and I get back something. I'm not just investing in something and it doesn't have any kind of positive, it doesn't seem to be going anywhere. And what do I do about that? It's getting what you put into something, but not putting everything into it and it being one-sided. The same with work. It's funny, sometimes when I do private readings, people will say, well, we're thinking about getting back together, but they never say, I have to ask, well, why did you break up? That part always seems to get, is not mentioned. And, sometimes people get so excited about the reunion that they don't think about, well, wait a second, is anything going to change? Same thing with a job situation. If it was something where it was like, okay, some people are going to get laid off, but then some get rehired. Well, maybe that's you. Maybe, they laid you off, but they didn't, but even though they're thinking about hiring you again, you're not so sure. And you might have a good point, because you might be looking at, well, is this something that happens all the time? Or it's just kind of, they do this and they can just like quickly, or just all of a sudden cancel me. And what do I do about that? It's kind of up in the air. And so you may be, and with the Ten of Wands, there's more to that story too sometimes. Maybe you're being overworked. And if you're just so grateful that you have a job again, perhaps you've been interviewing and you haven't found anything you like, you might be tempted to go back. But the Page of Swords is almost like protecting yourself in some way from future problems in the same vein as you experienced. What crosses you is the Temperance card. We have the 1 foot in water, 1 foot in land, so spiritual and material concerns, a balance between this. I was going to say, when I was talking about some of the astrological things, I never really mentioned Neptune, because it is an outer planet, about the fact that for Pisces, it's in your own sign. So if anybody can deal with Neptunian energy, it would be a Pisces, but that doesn't mean that it's necessarily easy for you. In other words, you may feel like you understand that type of influence, and even though it's kind of like, forming a conjunction or being in the same sign with your sun sign or your rising sign, you still may feel like there are benefits to it. And for sure, especially spiritually, this can really elevate you and make you feel like there is some kind of greater purpose in your life. Now, usually Pisces people, naturally possess that knowledge of that. But even with a Pisces person, you live in the world too, and you have concerns, and that can kind of distract you from this. So this could be like a very big time. Now, I was going to look up when Pisces leaves Neptune, or Neptune leaves Pisces. I think it might be like 2026 or 27, but it's, definitely quite a ways away. And so you still have quite a bit of that left there. But the point is that it can create idealism or it can create confusion. And it's up to you to balance your life. The Temperance card may indicate that you're putting too much emphasis on one area of life. I mean, in one way of being, either you're too ungrounded and perhaps you're just kind of in la la land and it might be really good. Maybe you've been having like some spiritual breakthroughs, but you find that your day-to-day life is kind of in disarray because you just are so immersed in something, some higher state of consciousness. Or you may find that you're consumed by worldly concerns. And that may feel to you like, hey, what am I supposed to do? I'm in this I'm in this world and I have bills to pay and I got this and I have children, or whatever it is. And that's true, but with these cards above, it can affect how you view your challenges. If you're too immersed in all of the day-to-day stuff, you can forget the fact that you're a spiritual being having a human experience and put it in perspective and know that this too shall pass, and that it's really that you may be feeding into it in some way. Maybe you're being too overly concerned about your material side of life, and maybe you need to kind of just step back from that for some reason. You're trying to control things, who knows, and look at it from a different perspective and go into that. Or you need to become more practical and grounded. And the reason I say that, especially with the job situation, well, it could be love life too, is that sense of lack consciousness, or that sense of like fear-based thinking when it comes to, will this job, this new job that I've accepted, will it bear fruit? Or maybe you started your own business. Will it happen? I feel like you're working for somebody else though, because the Page of Swords to me is kind of like somebody who is observing around them everybody else's behavior. So I'm not sure. Before I get to the last two cards, I just want to state some of the other transits that are occurring. So Venus goes into your second house on the 7th, so that's good for money because Venus attracts money. It's the house that she rules. Full moon on the 9th at 20 degrees of Leo. And because this is going to be that 6th house. So because it's the 6th house, that could be some kind of an ending of a job. Perhaps the Page of Swords, you've been there at this job and something seems like it's not quite right. Perhaps you thought that you accepted a new position and it was supposed to give more money, and all it's done is given you more work. And actually, I think that would be more along the lines if you work for commission, more than, because everybody else, they would get a regular salary, but maybe it's one of those things where they give you a fancy job title and say you've gotten a promotion, but you're not seeing the money yet and you're working twice as much, or even a third as much might be too much. So something can come to a head in your workplace. Maybe this is a coworker and that's what you're kind of like suspicious about, that they are bad-mouthing you. Who knows? It could be like getting a raise, Full moon can bring things to blossoming And that could be a promotion or a raise. Doesn't have to be something bad. Not that any of these other things are bad. They're just, they are all vehicles to get you to a new place in life. On the 16th, Mars goes into Capricorn. So for you, this is the 11th house. So, oh, well, hello. What this means, so Mars is in Sag, that means that there is something going on career-wise. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some kind of a conflict with your supervisors or people in positions of power for you. And you may have a good gripe. It might not be just that you're being rebellious either. But then but it can be that you're just being very ambitious and you're a go-getter, going after your career. When Mars goes into the 11th on February 16th, this can be a time when you are now being very assertive and active when it comes to group situations. I would even say if it's connected to your work with networking opportunities. And there could be a clash with a friend because Mars can be that conflict, that aggression. And so just be aware of that. You don't have to escalate. You don't have to, if somebody else starts something, you don't have to finish it for them. On the same day, Mercury goes retrograde. I told you about this, so I'm not going to talk about that. Well, I'll just say it starts in your first house and goes back into your 12th house. I didn't write this down, but it's on the 23rd. There's a new moon at 4 degrees of Pisces, so that's your new moon. And so, Pisces, you're a great meditator. I could see you being a really good visualizer. So visualize, take some time out during this period around the maybe a day after the new moon, and write down what you want. Don't censor yourself, don't second guess yourself. Set your intentions for the coming year. It's going to be a change agent year. And, some people when they hear the word change, they're like, ugh, but when we have these major changes, they propel us to greater heights. And it may take some time afterwards when we look back and say, oh yeah, this was really for my highest good. At the time I thought it was just, turning my life upside down, but it actually, worked out that way. What's coming in is the Hierophant. This is a card of philosophy. This is a card of marriage, but I don't see marriage cards up there. This can be something to do with the way that you're viewing life now. That has that philosophical where you're living within a certain set of guidelines. Pisces is, borderless, nebulous. That's just the nature, no boundaries. And the thing about that is that, you've ever heard that saying, if you stand for nothing, you'll fall for anything. I feel like we have to have some things that are meaningful to us, things that we live by, different, a belief system. And it can be our own. We don't have to follow somebody else's. Actually, the Hierophant is connected to these kind of traditional systems. And those aren't the only ones around. We can create our own spiritual belief system. But it has to work for us and really enhance our life. I think so many people, they're adopting this thing that was kind of foisted upon them that isn't really what they want. And they're trying to navigate that and trying to make that okay for them when it's not. So, question your beliefs. question what people have told you. Even if you read it in a book, don't just think it's true because you read it in a book or because somebody who has letters after their name told you. Really see if it resonates with you at a deep level. The Hierophant connects the sign of Taurus, and of course, we do have the Seven of Pentacles up there. Maybe that's a Taurian. But look at this. The outcome is the Nine of Cups, wish fulfillment. That is associated to me with the 11th house, hopes and wishes. And because you have Mars there, it's like, I feel like you're saying, you know what, I have been maybe sacrificing for your career and things like that because you've had Jupiter and Saturn in that 10th house in recent years. And now you're like, I've accomplished certain things and now I just want to go after my dreams. And they may have nothing to do with your career goals. There are other dreams that you have. And that is awesome. This can be like a relationship that you've wanted, maybe with a Taurus individual. Maybe it's this person is marriage material. Somebody that you can spend the rest of your life with. When I say marriage, I'm speaking of the cosmic union, not just signing on the dotted line. So anyway, all's well that ends well. And I hope that you enjoyed this, Pisces. If you'd like a personal reading, the link is below. Take care. Bye.